If you're coming across this video, there's no coincidence. The universe is constantly speaking to us. And it means that you've consumed enough and God wants you to start creating. I'm going to be sharing this from the lens of a trauma practitioner and my own personal story. When I was in my late 20s, I met this shaven-headed jewelry designer, and I thought it was amazing that he had this career designing jewelry and being creative. We were in a personal growth training at the time in New York City. I pulled him aside and I was like, wow, it's so great that you can do this because it sounds like a much more challenging career and here you are succeeding in it. And he says to me, you know, everyone in my family is an artist of some form and we all create. The belief that it's hard or challenging to support yourself with it never comes up in my family because this is just how we live and always have. I remember that being a powerful moment for me, that if you don't have some conversation or belief that it's hard or a struggle, then it just doesn't exist. Because when I was younger, I loved all sorts of creative stuff. I would paint, I would write stories, and I loved dancing. And my mom, I remember in 8th grade at a ballet class, I said to my mom, I want to continue and I want to be a dancer. And she said to me, you're never going to make a living being a dancer. You're going to have to pick something else. And I just listened to her at the time. I was 14 and I just believed her. I didn't realize at the time that it was just a belief, because where she grew up, people had to work hard just to survive and provide for their families. So in my late 20s, when I heard that from this jewelry designer, it struck a chord with me, but it wasn't until maybe a decade later where I met this other artist and I said to him, I wish I was creative. And he turns and says to me, everybody's creative. And I was like, no, like, not like you though, you're an actual artist. And he was a painter, drawer, he did digital art, other mediums. And he looked at me again and said, no, everybody is creative. Every once in a while, he would just keep repeating that. Everyone is creative. It just might not look the same way. Gradually, it sunk in. My profession since 2017 has been working with trauma resolution. And I realized that when we have a story so stuck in our head about who we think we are, our identity, it could prevent us from doing things we actually have a natural gift for, and we don't even think to question it. A couple years ago, I decided I want to do it. I want to work through whatever there is to work through, because there was all this insecurity and the fear of not being good enough. But then the desire to create became so strong, I decided, okay, I'm going to just use this desire I have, put a goal, and work my way through it. And that's exactly what happened. I started reading Storyworthy. I wanted to start making YouTubes and telling stories that were helpful to people. It took over a year. I was getting triggered every single week. There were times where I was just procrastinating because I was so sure that my work wasn't good enough. But as I continuously did trauma work on myself, I realized that that was just all subconscious conditioning, that I had trained myself to reject my own work and be really critical about it. Since a young age, I kept chipping away at the story that I wasn't creative. And I realized over the next couple months, as I worked through and started freeing my body of all these triggers from the past, that those burdens, those emotional triggers, weren't the truth of who I was. And as I cleared it out, all of a sudden, this creativity started emerging. And then I had a client who had a career initially that was sort of creative, but it was kind of scratching that creative itch very indirectly. And he just took a big leap and went to art school and spent the next few years training and studying in art. And he had the same thing happen. By walking on this creative path, he was feeling trigger after trigger from his past. Again, these feelings of not feeling worthy of being seen, expressing himself, that fear of rejection. By the time he graduated, he was a completely different person. Following this path changes who you become. It frees your inner creativity. And this client of mine now has a thriving artistic business, and he makes way more money than he ever did in his previous career, and he's so happy, working less hours. And I've met many people who, to me, it's so obvious that they have something to share, that they are so creative, but they get really frozen. So the trauma is real, and it's completely clearable. Like, I'm not even saying this just so you work with me. Like, go work with somebody else. Like, internal family systems therapists are incredible. Family constellations liberate your real self. Everybody is a creative, but the only way to discover it is going through the journey, using your creative desires, doing your reps, and practicing every day at whatever it is that brings you aliveness. So when I was doing my own process like this, I just started doing creative reps. I started painting and writing for 6 months. And then I decided to crank up the stakes. And so I decided I was going to do a moth storytelling competition. And I had read the book Storyworthy by Matthew Dix, which is so good if you want to tell true stories at the moth. And 6 weeks before my performance, I got tension headaches. The trauma was speaking through the body, and it was saying, like, what are you doing? You're going to be seen, you're going to be shamed, you're going to be rejected. We don't want that. And my conscious mind was so excited to go, but my subconscious mind was giving me tension headaches. For a couple weeks, I just thought they were just headaches. And then after the 4th week, I said, all right, this isn't normal. It can't be healthy for my liver to be popping this much ibuprofen. And then I had a specific internal family system session on my headaches, and it turns out I found this part of me that was terrified of being on stage and being seen. And once I cleared it, I had 2 sessions on it, and then my headaches completely went away. We have so many clever little emotional protectors that can come up, and they do affect our body and our nervous system. When I was 21, I went on an acting audition to Silver Cup Studios because I thought I was going to be an actress. And when I went in front of the casting directors, my voice started shaking. I had no idea that that was going to happen. They probably couldn't understand a word of what I was saying, but all I knew is that I wanted to act then. And I had no idea. It's like my body had a life of its own. And again, that's why I went into trauma work years later, because I couldn't understand why my body and my emotions would react in these ways that were so counter to my conscious mind. And when I was 22, I gave up on acting. I did not know that I could heal all that anxiety that was there around being seen and performing. And many artists that I have talked to since then have all agreed that the journey of who you become is what's important. Getting those reps in, being really relaxed with yourself in the beginning. Like, you're not making the art to be in some sort of show or to get many likes or views. You're doing it for you. So you've got to get those reps in. And on the way, if you do healing work, you can even use AI. You can type in and find an IFS therapy bot. Powerful. Even when I can't go to a therapy session, if I use an IFS AI bot, it is so healing and helpful. It's helped me move through so many triggers, but it's really about taking those steps and doing those reps. That is really the healing journey. You can't do it just by being in your head. And when I read Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, she talked about how she waited tables and took all sorts of odd jobs to follow her passion. All the other jobs she did for money so she could support this passion. So you don't have to give up your day job, but just if you can start every day, even just for 5-10 minutes, start doing something creative without thinking about the results, with no regard to personal success, doing it for the sake of doing it because you want to reveal who you really are. And I recently saw this guy who I called initially the guy in the woods. Connor, thank you. I saw his video recently and I saw that this was a trending topic. And I watched this video and I got so much out of it just by hearing someone's authentic story. And I was so inspired that this guy was just in the woods, sharing from his heart, his earnest desire to help and to create, that I wanted to put my take on it. As a trauma practitioner, I appreciate how much our stories can help each other.